Hello, Malton. It's me, Zombie GG, bringing you my latest ZGG fireside chat. Unfortunately, some zombies ate the final episode of my series with Moonsilk, but I have for you tonight the first part of a brand new series with one of my most feared frenemies, an absolute terror of a player whose insights and actions have been the harbinger of fear and destruction to pro survivor psychologies and safe havens for the majority of my career in this city. I speak none other than the deadly Penguinpyro from the Flowers of Decay player killer group. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. Zombie GG reporting in after a very long break, and I have a very special guest with me, Penguinpyro. A lot of you folks might know this individual from the very fearsome Flowers of Decay PKer group.
Hey everyone.
I guess I just kind of want to start your story from the beginning. When did you first get into Urban Dead?
So I joined in September 2009 with a character named Penguinpyro. He was a private who was pretty clueless. So I went to the wiki, when I first died, and I looked up a group, the Anti-Zombie Squad. So I joined that group, and it was my first group, and that was my own character for a while. I eventually became leader of the Anti-Zombie Squad because all the other previous leaders resigned. And after I took over the squad, I realized why they resigned. It turns out that with a name like the Anti-Zombie Squad, and it's also alphabetically first, right? So it's like a default group for a lot of people. So a lot of people who are not very good players join. So there's a lot of cat herding, and the group didn't really have too much of an identity because there's no real niche. It's the Anti-Zombie Squad. It sounds as generic as it's as generic as it sounds. So I struggled with that and eventually resigned as leader. But before that happened, there was the March of the Dead too.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of that. I missed that, probably fortunately.
Well, it was if you were with a group that knew what it was doing, it was like so much fun. It was like the only time that Urban Dead felt like a real apocalypse. Okay, I cannot overstate how fun it was if you could get a revive. It felt like an actual zombie apocalypse because everything was dead and there was like everything was like totally ruined. And you're like running for their life. If you set up camp in a building, you'll be dead in 24 within like 3 hours if you don't move. So it felt like a real zombie apocalypse.
Wow. Yeah, just no support or stability. It was just like
Yeah, yeah.
pure survival.
Pure survival. Yeah, so it felt like a real zombie. It was the most fun I've had. But that set me on the path of becoming a PKer because during that time, a lot of survivor groups were helpless, right? They they had like this, they got these wild ideas in their head, like, oh, we can make a last stand here, zombies will, will fail to break in the barricades as usual, and then the dead just like completely swept over them, right? It really disenchanted me with being just a regular survivor, and I was really getting kind of bored of that. At that point, I was a bounty hunter. I was mostly hunting PKers personally. But I realized that, actually, so I decided, after March of the Dead was, I wanted the March of the Dead to keep going after the Dead got tired of this, of keeping it up. And so I decided, you know what, I'm gonna, take one of my survivor alts and just go PK with them, see what happens. And it was a lot of fun, actually. I think the part that I enjoyed most was making like a clever kill speech.
That's awesome. You flavored your PKs. That's all I really ask. That's what I love so much about the Flowers of Decay. You guys PK'd with style.
Exactly, right? Well, anybody can just like shoot up and empty them all, right? But if you can make everyone laugh doing it, then well, it's a totally different experience.
It really makes a signature too.
But,
I don't know. It adds an extra layer of fear, because it's like it's so well constructed, the assassination. It kind of feels so personal and so much more like
yeah.
extra instead of just some random PK. And it's like, okay, whatever, go get revived.
Yeah, instead of the ordinary, just like scramble up to revive point and just try to find whoever did it. Right? That's life as usual. Getting PK by someone with a good kill speech is an experience. It's a cinematic experience kind of.
Yeah, that's an awesome way to put it.
And if this kill speech is actually good, it's not gloaty, but it's a little funny. Has a lot of personality to it. I don't mind being PK'd.
I've always felt the same way. Hate crime was one of my favorite Flowers of Decay. That person was very good at putting the fancy touch on the
Oh yeah,
speeches.
he's better than me at the role playing.
We've had
Without
a
doubt.
lot of great encounters back and forth.
Yeah.
Sometimes we've just like ran into each other empty in like a movie theater or a bank, and we just like flavor it up or whatever, you know. Or one of us will just like admit defeat to the other one, just be like, sits in a chair, stares
Yeah.
at hate crime, begins eating popcorn, saying like my last goodbye or whatever, you know, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's like a Tarantino film, right? When they're both wounded, they like just sitting down, like decided, just talk about some random thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It feels more personal than just like, meeting someone at the store and having small talk, right? Having small talk, while dying or like, in the middle of a shootout. It's fun. So this was in like roughly 2013. I was just an independent PKer, right? So I quit the AZS, the anti-zombie squad, and decided, had all three of my alts just PKing. And then also one of these alts was formerly in a group with Josh Clark, who is also a legend, a bounty hunting legend, right? A very famous guy at his time. Maybe not so much now. And he actually joined the Flowers of Decay without me knowing, and he had an alt there, and didn't tell anyone. It was a secret. So he said, like, oh, I heard you've been PKing. Like, would you like to join the organized group? And I said, like, sure. So I've been doing it myself. Sounds more fun with the group. And I was right. So he introduced me to them. I joined initially under a separate identity, but eventually I said, like, I'm this guy. I'm Penguinpyro from the AZS, and you may know me for so and so and so and so. And they're like, okay, cool. So that wasn't a problem at all. So this was in 2014, I believe, that I joined the Flowers of Decay, and I've been PKing with them on and off until last year when I left Urban entirely. So
What was the original Flowers of Decay like meta platform? Was it like a forum like a lot of folks used?
yeah, it was a Zeta Boards forum.
Zeta boards. I remember like
Yeah,
having an
which is
old pro boards forum back in like the early
yeah,
2000s, my
yeah,
first run in Urban Dead.
yeah, yeah. Zeta Boards. And I think Zeta Boards sold their business to Tapastic. So now we have a very long dead Tapastic forum, which is still around, but no one actually uses it.
It's
Um,
cool. It's like a
it's
museum
completely
piece.
yeah,
A lot of
it's a
like
museum
old
piece.
records.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Speaking of old stuff, do you remember what the leadership was like in the anti-zombie squad when you first joined? Was there like a leader?
Yeah, there was Janice Abernathy. Uh, Janice was very cool, very welcoming, but I think she had to go to university, so I just didn't have time anymore for leadership. So, surprisingly enough, I think she appointed me as the inheritor after like a couple of years.
Do you remember like what suburb it was mostly based out of? I definitely heard of that group name. West Grayside. I gotta pull up a map.
But we weren't a stationary group. We moved wherever. West Grayside is basically like downtime between operations if we couldn't think of somewhere to go.
That's an interesting style. A lot of groups I remember, especially back in the earlier days of Urban Dead, were very like stationary and very
Yeah,
territorial to their like
yeah,
little stations.
yeah. The thing is that West Grayside is it's a pretty safe place. It's usually there's no major zombie groups in the area. At least not any that directly antagonize us. So
Oh, it's just south of Kempster Bank. So,
yeah,
were you folks hanging out with like the Knights Templar at all,
oh
interacting
yeah,
with them?
yeah, yeah. At the time, we were kind of like the little brothers to the Knight Templar, I guess. We had a partnership with them, lots of very close diplomatic relations, and I figure they attracted most of the zombies looking to start trouble in the area. So
West Grayside, yeah, I haven't looked at this suburb in a minute. That's where Pole Mall is and Clapton
oh yeah,
Stadium.
oh yeah,
A ton of auto repairs. Like,
yeah,
holy
yeah.
cow. One,
Yeah.
two, three, four, five, 6, 7. Jeez.
Headquarters was the Bellamy building, I believe, so right in the center.
Oh, yeah.
Although we weren't goofy enough to actually occupy it, we just like considered it a special place.
Do you remember any like local zombie mobs or any other like local survivor groups in the area from back in the day?
Not really. We had a lot of players who were specifically after us, but they didn't exactly like they followed us around. Weren't specific to West Grayside. And West Grayside honestly it was kind of a boring suburb. It's a very quiet place. So.
It's nice to have a spot to, retreat back to that you can rely on for stability.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So 2009 through 2013, you did the like Pro Survivor thing for a bit, and then
Yeah,
seems like Anti-Zombie Squad is just kind of oversaturated with rookies, and it's just this constant training process, getting
yeah,
newbies introduced to the game, which I
yeah.
can see how that can get old quickly. And then
Very common.
you said you were a bounty hunter. That's pretty cool. Were you using like the rogues gallery back in the day?
Oh yeah, all the time. Loved it. My character in the Anti-Zombie Squad was a bounty hunter. After a while, because I got regular survivor stuff, and I also had an alt in Team Extreme, which is Josh Clark's group. Yeah, so old timers will remember Josh Clark. I think Team Extreme lasted until 2011, something like that.
I'm trying to think. Flowers of Decay. Weren't they like another PKer group before Flowers of Decay?
Flowers of Disease.
Flowers of Disease, that's right.
Both groups have the same founder, Hibernaculum, who's by the way a legend. If you can get a hold of him, like that's like me times three basically. But he's a legend. He founded both groups. Has been the backbone, of both for a while.
It sounds like you just really wanted to experience all the different aspects of play style that Urban Dead has to offer. You did the like Pro Survivor, the Bounty Hunter, and then you switched to PK. Or you really did the full 360 for the Survivor experience in Malton.
Oh god, and then my first experience with death culting was I think 2015, some 2016 with so there was a survivor group called Skynet Defense Network.
I remember those guys.
Yeah, those guys, they were cool. And then I think they got similar to me. They got bored of playing Survivor, so they decided to go be care and Death Cultists, and they formed a group called Oedipus Rex, which was very short-lived. I think it only lasted a year, but it was so much fun because it was so well coordinated, and we had so many people. You could just like completely screw with people. I think we simultaneously fought off the Malton Rangers and like the surrounding four suburbs at once at one point. It was crazy.
Jeez.
Death Cultists are scary if you get enough of them in one spot, well organized.
Yeah. In my experience playing Urban Dead on like a meta level, PKers seem like they really have to have their stuff together the most because they're just like so heavily hated by the pro survivors generally. Pro survivors get such a rage and like a lot of them take it so personal that they like go out of their way to like make sure if you're on that rogues gallery that you're like dead.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's tricks, right? The Rogues Gallery is well. There's two things I want to talk about. First is that the Rogues Gallery was kind of a mixed bag for pro survivors. On one hand, you can easily look up someone and find if they're PK, right? There's even a tool that automatically highlights it for you, right? That's cool. But the other thing is that it also encouraged PKing because people collect bounties for fun. The infamy, right? And hunting down reporters in particular was particularly valuable at the time because you can immediately see the results of your work and get points for it, right? That's what they are. The bounties are literally points. You basically further gamifying PKing by awarding points, infamy points to them. Right? Like once you have the KOS status, it doesn't, there's no penalty to giving even more points. So a lot of PKers race to see who can get, the most points, right? So the most points in a month, something like that.
Did you have a particular rival back in your like heavy playing days?
Gosh, I think um, this was after the Rogues guy went down, but there was a guy named Monk of Squadron Quadruple One. I loved topping him over and over once every other day for like a month. It was fun. But no, I didn't really have any rivals in the sense that of anyone like I was like specifically gunning for. I was good at not being shot back, but I wasn't particularly good at finding individual people, specific people.
Okay.
Other PKers have those skills where they can find specific people and shoot them once every other day, which is crazy.
So if I remember right, is Flowers of Decay a PKer group that particularly targets survivors that aren't participating in like action type zones, like survivors that are hanging out in like peaceful green suburbs while there's other suburbs that could really use.
Yeah, that's not like the reason we do it, but that is the in-character justification, and that is how we tend to operate because PKers don't like to have to compete with zombies, right, for kills or be killed by zombies. So most PKers will go to green zones anyways.
Okay, that's another thing I always liked about the Flowers of Decay is, as someone who primarily plays Pro Survivor my entire career in Urban Dead, I thought that in a way they kind of help set a fire under the survivor's butt. Like if the flowers show up, it's like maybe
Oh yeah,
maybe you should get a grip on like the bigger picture and go help
yeah,
some neighboring allies or something instead of
absolutely,
sitting in your little
absolutely.
bar
Yeah.
role
Yeah.
playing.
That's actually why we rarely ran into groups that that saw a lot of action, like the PD Defense Force, right? Or the mobile arm of the Knights Templar. So our rivals were the stationary half of the Knights Templar. The mobile arm we rarely saw because they were always actually fighting for real. So we don't go to war zones. So that was an interesting dichotomy there.
How would you describe the difference between PKers and death cultists, just to help me and the audience understand that it's not PKing just isn't PKing. Like there is like a
Yeah.
dichotomy.
So PKers are basically PKing is extremely non-impactful to survivors. If survivors just ignore it, PKers have to spend a lot of time, a lot of AP for every kill, and the kills are, easily countered, easily reversed through revives, right? Compared to an equivalent mass number of zombie players, PKers can't do much to survivors. Where PKers do damage to survivors is the psychological aspect, right? Because it's infuriating to have, to get a smarmy kill speech and then just be shot in the mid-course you thought was perfectly safe.
Yeah.
So it's mostly psychological. Right? Death cultists, on the other hand, not mostly psychological. There's a psychological aspect, of course, but the thing is that they can cause like real disproportionate harm to survivors. It's more of a goal-oriented thing. So PKing is more of a style thing, or a role-play thing, where they can't have too much concrete impact on the game per person, like for the numbers, but they can have like outsized effect on psychology. Death cultists just wreck a suburb, right? If you look at Gorecore of the RRF, they are terrifying.
Yeah.
If you looked at like Oedipus Rex or my own former Death Cultist group, the Cleaning Crew,
Oh wow, that was yours?
that was us. That was us.
That's cool.
They were the ones that were helping the Rotwood elite break stuff.
Ooh, down in Wittenside.
Yeah, the Cleaning Crew used to be nomadic until we eventually settled down in Wittenside.
And then what about Red Rum? That's another old name I'm remembering.
Red Rum are PKers. They're not Death Cultists. I was very briefly involved with them. Very briefly.
They were
Um,
terrifying back in the earlier days, I remember. They're like the
yeah,
first big mainstream PK group, if my memory serves correctly, at least from my personal experience.
yeah, they were like the big names. PK.
Do you remember any specifics from that group? Any like big
Um,
players?
so I was part of Red Rum 2, which was kind of it felt very casual. They would kill each other a lot for fun.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
brutal.
not my speed. I prefer killing the survivors.
I remember Creedy Guerrilla Raiders were pretty
Ooh,
terrifying too. They were a big
yeah,
pest.
yeah. The FOD had a lot of collaboration with them.
Headless Gunner, I'll never forget that guy's name.
Oh yeah, he was fun to be around. We've had some time around the CGR. They are a well put together group. I was always disappointed that they didn't actually fight with CDF. Apparently they had some kind of truce. So I don't know why, because it's in the name, but they did apparently not fight the CDF.
It's interesting. I remember they'd creep into Rothwood every once in a while, and it's just like, oh gee, it's always just like a wrench in the plans, like Rothwood being all pretty hardcore engineered tactics going on, trying to fight zombies, always calculate what's going on at Nicole's
Oh
Mall,
yeah.
Blackmore Building, Tynt Mall up in Pimbank, and then Woodruff Mall down, and
Yeah.
just all these calculations and thoughts and moving things around, and then all of a sudden a PK group shows up, and it's like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, okay guys,
Yeah.
we all got to go to dark buildings again.
Yeah. Let me tell you, it is a compliment if a PK group shows up while you are defending against a siege. It means one of two things. First of all, they are confident enough in your abilities that they know that you'll last long enough for their rival to be worth it. Second of all, they are confident enough that you can keep the infrastructure up so that, because the PKs need infrastructure too. So they're confident that you can keep the infrastructure well enough for them to restock. But it is a compliment because if a garbage group fighting against zombies would fold instantly, right? And PKs know that. So what's the point of showing up?
Welcome back, Malton. This concludes the first part of my ZGG fireside chat with Penguinpyro from the Flowers of Decay Player Killer group. Be sure to stay tuned to part 2, coming soon. This ZGG fireside chat is a post-apocalyptic production proudly presented to you by me, Zombie GG, and my guest, Penguinpyro. Thanks for listening, Malton, and as always, the pleasure's been mine.